It was late on a quiet Wednesday night in Toledo, Ohio, the kind of hour when most of the city had already gone to sleep. The roads were nearly deserted, save for the odd worker finishing a late shift or, in this case, Lieutenant Colonel Adrienne Wallace, who was on her way home after a long meeting at a military base a couple of hours away. She drove a government-issued SUV, black, modest, tinted windows not flashy, just efficient. Like her, she was alert but relaxed, focused on the drive, her thoughts already drifting toward home. She wasn't speeding, wasn't weaving, just driving steady and calm. A few miles up the road, parked just off Reynolds, sat Sergeant Daniel Mercer. He was nursing a stale cup of coffee and scrolling through his phone, bored. The shift had been uneventful, so when an unfamiliar SUV passed, he perked up. Something about it caught his attention. He threw the coffee cup aside, started the cruiser, and flipped on the lights. Adrienne noticed the flashing red and blue in her rear view and calmly pulled to the side. No panic, no fuss, just muscle memory and protocol. She slowed to a stop, hands on the wheel. Window halfway down, Mercer's door slammed as he stepped out, one hand on his holster, the other holding a flashlight. He didn't bother approaching the passenger side. He walked right up to hers. License and registration, he said flatly, skipping any introduction. Adrienne kept her movements slow and visible. Officer, may I ask why I'm being pulled over? The flashlight moved to her face. Mercer squinted. You were drifting between lanes. No signal. Looked like maybe you were under the influence. She didn't flinch. I wasn't. License and registration, he repeated, his voice a notch louder, without argument. Adrienne leaned over and retrieved her documents from the glove compartment, then calmly handed them over. This is a government vehicle. I'm a federal employee. Mercer looked over the ID for a beat. Military, yes. A smirk tugged at his mouth. Doesn't put you above the law. I never claimed it did. His demeanor shifted. Step out of the vehicle. Adrienne frowned. Excuse me? I said step out. Sobriety test. Her jaw tightened slightly, but her voice remained composed. I haven't been drinking. I've complied. I'd like to know the basis for this. Mercer stepped closer. Are you refusing to follow a lawful order? I'm asking for clarification. That did it. He moved to open the door himself, out of the car. At that moment, Adrienne quietly tapped her phone and started recording. Just so we're clear, she said calmly. This is being documented. Mercer's eyes flicked to the phone. There was a brief flicker of uncertainty, but his ego shoved it aside. Step out. Adrienne exited the vehicle, her posture straight, commanding without being combative. She didn't resist. She didn't raise her voice. But the way she stood, the way she moved, it made Mercer pause for the first time. Still, he went through with it. He ran her through the motions under a street lamp, making her walk a line like a drunk kid on a Friday night. She passed flawlessly. Her steps were steady, her speech clear, her focus sharp. Nevertheless, he wrote her up for failure to stay. In lane dot, she took the citation without comment. Just a look. Then she got back in her SUV and disappeared into the night. What Mercer didn't realize was that that slip of paper would follow him, and it would not be forgotten. 15 years in uniform had etched wear into Mercer's features and carved a rigid worldview into his mind. He believed in the chain of command, but only when he was at the top of it. He didn't like being questioned. He liked control. To him, the badge wasn't a symbol of service. It was authority. It was power. He handled the call the way he always did. Back at the precinct, he logged the citation. Quick notes. Nothing remarkable. Then he docked his body cam and moved on. 2 days passed before anyone bothered to check the footage. In the meantime, Mercer chuckled about it in the break room. Tried to flash her credentials like I was supposed to care. He said to Officer Diaz. Thought she could pull rank. Diaz looked up. Military? Mercer shrugged. That's what she said. Some fed. Attitude for days. What was her name? Diaz asked. He popped open a snack bag and leaned back. Wallace. Adrienne Wallace. Diaz froze. Wait. Lieutenant Colonel Wallace? Mercer blinked. You know her? She lectured at the academy last year. Diaz said slowly. She's not just military. She's high command. Logistics out of Fort Wayne. Bronze Star. To tours overseas. She's the real deal. Mercer said nothing. For the first time since that roadside stop, he felt the first tremor of doubt. Asterisk, Mercer scoffed and waved the whole thing off. Don't care who she is. Out here, I make the rules, he muttered, brushing aside Diaz's warning. But something in Diaz's voice, subtle, respectful, lingered in the back of his mind. It chipped away at Mercer's usual arrogance, though not enough to make him reconsider. He never went back to review the footage in his mind. It was overdone and buried. But it wasn't, because Lieutenant Colonel Adrian Wallace had already submitted a formal complaint, not just to internal affairs, but directly to the office of the Inspector General, and she wasn't alone. The video she had taken during the stop had already been handed over to her legal team, and another copy had started quietly moving up the military chain of command. Mercer had no idea. He was still out on the streets, handling routine calls, barking at drivers, carrying himself with the same untouchable swagger that had shielded him for years. The system had always looked out for him, supervisors turning a blind eye, union reps shutting down issues before they could stick. Over time, he'd stopped seeing accountability as something that applied to him, but this time, he'd met someone different. Adrienne Wallace didn't shout. She didn't argue. She didn't cower. She documented. She followed process. And she made one precise call to the right person at the right office with evidence in hand. Still, Mercer remained unaware until a plain manila envelope landed on his desk. Adrienne wasn't the type to stir up drama. After more than 2 decades in uniform, to deployments overseas, and more life-threatening situations than most people could handle, she didn't chase every injustice. But this time felt different. This time, it wasn't just about her. It was about every young soldier she'd mentored, every civilian she'd seen mistreated, and every woman, especially every black woman who had been forced to stay silent, just to keep the peace. As she was done staying silent, back at Fort Wayne, she sat at her desk, bleary-eyed from a restless night. Not just from anger, though it simmered beneath the surface, but because the encounter kept looping in her mind. The way Mercer talked to her, like she didn't matter, the way his hand hovered close to his holster, the way he seemed to be trying to provoke her. She knew the routine. She'd seen how quickly things could go wrong even with a camera running. Her aide, Sergeant Daniels, knocked lightly and stepped in. "You all right, ma'am?" Adrienne looked up, calm but resolute. "Not really, but I'm taking care of it." He shut the door behind him. "I saw the clip. Want me to loop in base legal?" "Already did," she replied. He hesitated. "You sure about going this route?" "I'm not after publicity," she said, leaning back in her chair. "I want consequences." She meant it. Her entire career had been built on discipline and ethics. Her rank wasn't just a title, it was the result of decades of hard decisions and leadership in high-stakes situations. She led missions through unstable regions, coordinated disaster responses, safeguarded lives and resources around the globe. But none of that had mattered to the officer who stopped her. In Mercer's eyes, she was just another driver, slow to respond, suspicious by default. What haunted her wasn't just his treatment, it was how effortlessly he did it. Like it was second nature. So she made her moves. She called the Judge Advocate General, filed a report with the Inspector General, attached the footage, laid out the facts, and left emotion out of it, just the truth and evidence. Within days, the case started echoing through military legal offices. It wasn't public yet, no press, but internally, Mercer's name was now flagged. Legal teams had been notified, and Adrienne, she kept doing her job. Business as usual, at least on the surface, but privately, she and her lawyer were preparing. According to legal counsel, the stop may have violated federal guidelines, especially given her government status and the absence of probable cause. If needed, they were ready to escalate. Adrienne didn't shy away from that possibility. She was ready to face it head on. Meanwhile, Mercer still thought it was just another dust-up, that it would fade like all the others. He didn't feel the pressure until he tore open the envelope in the precinct parking lot. Distracted, he assumed it was some routine paperwork, but the words on the page stopped him cold. A court summons, civil proceedings. Lucas County was calling him in, and suddenly, Mercer realized this time, it wasn't going away. A formal civil rights complaint had been submitted. The plaintiff, Lieutenant Colonel Adrienne Wallace. The accusation, infringement of constitutional rights during a routine traffic stop, unlawful detention, intimidation, and misuse of power. Mercer stood frozen, eyes fixed on the document. Then, with a scoff, he dropped the paper and laughed. "No way this holds," he muttered. Not a chance, but the moment he walked back into the station, he felt the shift. The usual energy was off. His captain, Dan Reading, motioned him into the office. Doors shut, blinds drawn. "We've got a problem," Reading began. Mercer sat down, arms crossed. "What?" "That woman from the other night. She's trying to flip the script, make me the bad guy." Reading didn't respond with humor. "She's not some random driver, Mercer. Do you even realize who she is?" Mercer shrugged. "Doesn't matter." She was smug, arrogant, acting like she was above the law. "She is someone," Reading said flatly. "She's a lieutenant colonel, decorated combat vet, impeccable service record, and she's got video or body cam in hers." Mercer rolled his eyes. "So because she's military, we throw out protocol, just say sorry and walk away?" Reading leaned in. "No one's saying that. But this isn't going away. You're facing a court date. And once this gets out, and it will, you'll be at the center of a storm." Mercer bit his tongue. For once, no sharp retort came to mind. The date was set for 3 weeks from now, and as the days passed, the tension grew. Colleagues avoided eye contact. Conversations quieted. When he entered a room, he felt it. He wasn't the top dog anymore. He was the wounded one, and everyone smelled the blood. Meanwhile, back at base, Adrienne prepared in silence. No press, no spotlight. Just her and her legal team, going over every frame of footage, drafting every detail of her testimony. She was poised and methodical, but beneath the calm, there was steel. Her attorney, Delaney Price, studied her carefully. "You're sure about this? Court's public. Once it's out, there's no taking it back." Adrienne nodded. "Good. Let them see." Delaney paused. "Most people would have let it slide." "I've let too much slide already," Adrienne said. "This isn't just about what happened to me." She wasn't seeking compensation. She wanted precedent, a record, something solid that would stand as proof that titles and uniforms don't give anyone the right to humiliate or abuse. She wanted others to know they weren't alone and they didn't have to stay silent. When the day of the hearing arrived, she didn't slip in quietly. She entered in full dress uniform, every bar, every badge in place, her rank unmistakable. She wasn't trying to impress the jury, she was reminding them who she was. Not just a woman in a car that night, but someone who had fought for her country and expected to be treated with dignity in return. Mercer was already seated. When he looked up and saw her, something shifted in his face. The arrogance dulled, just a little. But the real reckoning began when Adrienne took the stand. The courtroom was filled not with cameras or reporters, but with people. Officers from both the local department, her military base. Some wore dress blues, others civilian suits. All sat in respectful silence. They didn't come for show, they came because it mattered to the outside world. This might have looked like a simple misunderstanding, a minor escalation, but Adrienne knew better. This was the breaking point. Years of subtle disrespect and unchecked power had led to that moment. Mercer sat still, jaw tight. As his attorney leaned in to whisper something, he didn't react, just kept his eyes on the judge. Then Adrienne stepped forward. She moved with the same precision she'd used guiding troops through hostile terrain. No rush, no hesitation. Every eye in the room followed her. Her presence wasn't loud, but it was commanding, not because of the uniform, but because of the strength behind it. The judge acknowledged her with a nod. "Colonel Wallace, thank you for your service. You may begin." Delaney stood. "Lieutenant Colonel, please recount what occurred on January 17th. Adrienne spoke clearly, without embellishment. "I was returning from a meeting with the Indiana Guard Reserve. Around 11:15 p.m., I was stopped by Officer Mercer. I had not violated any traffic laws. I was calm, cooperative. I asked a few questions, nothing out of line. His response was hostile. He ordered me out of the vehicle. No explanation. Her voice never wavered. No anger, just fact. But the weight behind her words hit like a hammer. Asterisk, asterisk. When I asked him why, he repeated the command more forcefully. He didn't explain, just barked it louder. That's when I reached for my phone and started recording." Dellen gave a short nod. "Did you refuse to comply with a lawful instruction?" "No." "Did you resist or argue?" "Not at all." "Did you identify yourself?" "Yes. I told him I was a federal employee and that the vehicle was government issued." The courtroom held its breath. No murmurs, no movement. Only her voice, firm and precise, and the soft scratch of pens across notepads. Then they played. The footage, first, Adrian's recording steady, sharp, undeniable. Then came the body cam. It confirmed everything. Mercer's posture, his tone, the way his hand hovered near his holster despite her complete cooperation. The roadside test he insisted on even after she passed. The way he shrugged her off like she didn't matter. The jury didn't say a word. They didn't have to. The atmosphere shifted all on its own. Next came cross-examination. Breener approached. Carefully, voice laced with that calculated respect attorneys use when they're setting a trap. Lieutenant Colonel Wallace, he said, "Is it possible Officer Mercer was simply following procedure?" Adrian looked at him evenly. "No. Could he have been acting out of concern for your safety? The safety of others? I was driving within the speed limit, sober, calm. There was no threat. And yet you recorded the encounter?" "Yes, because I've learned the hard way staying silent doesn't keep you safe. I wanted to record." Breener tilted his head. "So, in your view, officers shouldn't have discretion?" She answered without raising her voice. "Discretion must come with discipline. A badge doesn't grant you power without accountability. Even." The judge sat quietly for a beat before continuing. Then came Mercer's turn not to speak, but to watch. The footage played again, slower this time, frame by frame. Every narrow glance, every clipped word, every time he looked at her like she was a problem, not a person. The prosecutor stepped forward. "Sergeant Mercer, why did you order her out of the vehicle?" Mercer straightened. She looked evasive. "Did she disobey you?" She questioned me. "Is questioning an officer against the law?" He paused. "No." "Did she yell? Threaten you?" "No." "Then what made you escalate the situation?" Mercer didn't answer. "Were you aware she was a lieutenant colonel in the army?" "No. Not at the time." "If you had known," his voice dropped, "I might have acted differently." Silence. It wasn't remorse. It was something smaller, less noble and unguarded. Truth. That night, he hadn't seen a person, just someone who didn't respond fast enough, who didn't speak the way he wanted, who didn't submit. And now, facing her rank and record in full view, the courtroom saw it too, but the trial wasn't finished. Now the question was, what does justice really look like? 3 days passed. The courtroom was less crowded this time. No uniformed service members. No officers lurking at the back. Just Adrienne, her lawyer, and a few curious observers. Mercer sat stiffly beside his attorney, hands folded tight. Jaw clenched. Judge Cynthia Morales shuffled through the decision, then looked up. "In the matter of Wallace versus Mercer," she said, "the jury has ruled in favor of the plaintiff." Mercer shifted in his seat. Adrienne didn't move. "The court finds that the plaintiff's constitutional rights were violated during an unlawful stop and detainment." Judge Morales continued. "The conduct of Sergeant Mercer did not meet departmental standards or the baseline of professional behavior." There was no applause, no gasps. Just the dense stillness that follows when truth finally lands. Mercer's lawyer leaned in. "We'll file an appeal," he whispered, though even he sounded unsure. The judge went on. "Although no criminal charges will be filed at this time, the court awards $35,000 in damages. This ruling will remain on the public record and be forwarded to the Department of Justice as well as the Toledo Police Department for internal review. A possible policy revision." Adrienne sat quietly, not triumphant, just steady. The verdict wasn't revenge. It was recognition. She didn't smile or pump her fist. No celebration, just a small, quiet nod, not toward the judge or the jury, but inward, toward herself. The mission was complete. Outside, Mercer hovered near the bottom steps of the courthouse. He paced, in tight circles, folder clutched in his hand. A few local reporters had gathered, their lenses clicking as they tried to catch his expression. He didn't offer them words, didn't acknowledge them. He just ducked his head, shielded his face, and made his way to the car, driving off without a backward glance. Inside the building, Adrienne paused in the corridor and checked her phone. A notification blinked on the screen. "Verdict in your favor. Case closed." Her lawyer soon caught up, slightly breathless. "You could have gone after more," he said. Adrienne gave a small shake of her head. It was never about the money. Delaney studied her for a beat. "You think it'll make a difference?" She turned to the glass doors ahead. "I don't know, but maybe next time he pulls someone over, he'll hesitate, even for a second." 1 week later, Mercer was officially placed on administrative leave. An internal investigation was underway. Rumors swirled. Maybe a transfer, maybe worse. But either way, the armor he'd hidden behind had started to crack, and the fractures were plain to see. Back at Fort Wayne, Adrienne resumed her post as though nothing out of the ordinary had happened. She avoided the spotlight, declined interviews, and focused on the tasks in front of her. Mentoring her team, managing operations, fulfilling her responsibilities. Within her unit, though, the message had already landed. You don't have to shout to assert your worth. You don't have to fall apart to prove harm was done. And sometimes, the quietest defiance leaves the deepest mark. Still, even with the case behind her, Adrienne knew the fight wasn't finished. Because real accountability isn't just about what happened. It's about what happens next, too. Months later, she stood before a classroom of recruits, new faces, still getting used to their uniforms, eager to learn. This wasn't a tactics lecture. No discussions about logistics or deployment plans. Today was about something else entirely. She scanned the room and asked plainly, "How many of you believe respect comes automatically with the uniform?" A few hands lifted, some confidently, others with hesitation. She nodded slightly. "I get why you'd think that. But here's the reality. Respect isn't given on sight. It's earned, day after day, through your choices." She let the silence stretch before continuing. "Same applies to power, the badge, the rank. They're not shields. They're responsibilities. And if you can't carry that responsibility with control and principle, then you're not fit to carry it at all." Toward the back, one young soldier leaned forward, hanging on her words. Adrienne took a breath and added, "I once got pulled over by an officer who forgot that. I could have panicked. I could have lashed out. I could have ignored it." She met their eyes. "But I didn't. I documented what happened. I filed the complaint. I stood in court. I told the truth." A long pause. He thought his badge made him untouchable until he came face to face with someone whose authority wasn't just on her sleeve, but in how she held herself. She looked around the room. That's the real difference. That's what leadership looks like. No one moved, no one spoke, but the silence wasn't from disinterest. It was the kind that comes when something hits home. She closed the folder in front of her and gave a firm nod. "Lead with honor. Serve with integrity. Remember, the uniform represents more than just you. It carries the weight of those who came before and those who will come after." Without waiting for applause, she stepped down. Her part was done. Let this story be a reminder. When power goes unchecked, it becomes disguised for weakness. Speak out. Stand your ground. When you witness injustice, don't look away, because silence shelters the wrongdoers. But courage protects everyone else.